Hey everybody, Douglas Blair Roberts here, the Super Vader 400 here. It's time for another video, and this right here is my long, overweighted, overdue favorite cartoons list. Before finally getting the idea to do this specific video right here, I tried various versions of this video, but no version came out the way I wanted it. So I decided to split the cartoons up by genre, but that was taking too long. So I came up with a new um, video format, and instead of doing a long overview of all cartoons, first just do a narration video introducing some of my favorite cartoons, then do a narration portion and combine it with this video talking about all of my favorite cartoons, and just listing each of them. And pretty much, once again, as always, each of these long list videos are short overviews and long list of things I'm going to be talking about and reviewing on my brand new Facebook fan page. Some of these cartoons I've already reviewed and talked about on my various YouTube channels, and for those of watching on my YouTube channels, the links to those previous videos will be there. But with that being said, yeah, this long video right here will include cartoons from both genres. That's comedy adventure and action adventure. I put the anime cartoons in a whole different video. That will be the next video right after this video right here. Um, um, some of my so yeah. Oh, and as always, I will start with um, the modern cartoons. Then of course I will go straight to the I will go straight to the I will go back and forth from modern to retro to modern and retro again. Some of my all-time, some as when it comes to cartoons, my favorite genre, of course, is just like with films, is action, adventure, science fiction, and fantasy and horror. Those are my favorite genres. But I also enjoy comedy and adventure. If what I'm watching is entertaining, I will watch it. I like the action adventure. I like the large and colorful cast of characters, personalities, complex storylines, and the action, and of course the action and drama. For the comedy side of cartoons, it's the same thing. I like the large and colorful cast of the action for comedy cartoons that you have it, and just seeing the wacky and goofy situations the cartoon characters get themselves in, and see how they're gonna get out and triumph in the end. That's if they have a good ending, and it's the same thing. It's the same thing as actually with here. I want the perfect balance. I want the perfect balances of comedy and drama. I like to laugh and have a good time while watching cartoons. This is one of the pros to watching a comedy cartoon versus watching an anime or an edgy action adventure cartoon. So yeah, some of my favorite cartoons include from the comedy adventure genre include Smurfs, the Alvin and the Chipmunks, Fantastic Matt's Two Stupid Dogs, um, um, Doug, Rugrats, Hey Arnold's, Rocco's Modern Life, Ah Real Monsters, Ren and Stimpy, Chalk Zone, and pretty much all of the Nicktoons, excluding Cat Dog and Angry Beavers. Um, the cartoons, which are Ed and Eddie, Johnny Bravo, Dexter's Laboratory, and those cartoons, and Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, Class of 3000, Hi Hi, Puffy, Yummy Yumi. From the modern era, Regular Show, Uncle Grandpa, Steven Universe, We Bear Bears, Banicula, Loud House, and the brand new 2015 Alvin and the Chipmunks. Chipmunks from the action adventure, first starting from the modern list, the 2012 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series, Sonic Boom, Mighty Magiswords, the Marvel action animation block, Kung Fu Panda Legends of Awesomeness, and yeah, pretty much it. And then from the retro side of things, the Street Fighter cartoon, Double Dragon, Mortal Kombat based cartoon, Mortal Kombat Defenders of the Realm cartoon, the Sonic cartoons, the Marvel, DC cartoons, and of course Ben 10 and Wildcats, and so much more awesome cartoons on this list. And like I said in my movie video that I recently did, in this video right here, this is cartoons, of course, that I consider to be the best cartoons and some of my all-time favorites that I watch all the time. Cartoons that I don't think are as good as these cartoons will be, of course, excluded from the list. One of the more notable cartoons that was two of the more notable cartoons that were excluded from this list were the Fairly Odd Parents and the Fairly Odd Parents, what's the other cartoon called? Yeah, Fairly Odd Parents, SpongeBob, and I also excluded adult cartoons like Family Guy, because I don't really watch much adult cartoons, but I am a huge fan of cartoons like Family Guy, adult cartoons like Family Guy, Beavis and Butthead, and the popular show Boondocks. I wasn't sure what list to ever include them in, so I may do a list during favorite adult cartoons in the future, but I wasn't sure what list to include them in, so they have to be included some other time. But I am a huge fan of those cartoons, but they were left out of this list. Well, with that being said, let's get started right now. It's time to hit my music. Hey everybody, the Super Vader 400 here, Douglas Blair Roberts here. It's time for part 2 of my favorite Saturday morning cartoons list. We're going to start off with the 2010s comedy-based cartoons, and with that being said, number 1, we're going to start off with Cartoon Network. Number 1 is Uncle Grandpa, Steven Universe, Adventure Time, and Regular Show. Let me talk about these 4 shows for just a minute. one thing all four of these shows, which are all completely contrasting and different from each other, one thing all four of these shows shared in common is that, in my opinion, all four of these shows saved Cartoon Network and preserved Cartoon Network's credibility for the modern era. Because Lord knows Cartoon Network has done so many bad things and has made so many poor deci- decisions, such as the Cartoon Network CNN Real crap they did several years ago. They've done so much to damage their reputation as a credible cable channel. But these four shows right here saved and preserved Cartoon Network's credibility and dignity. And these four shows showed that not only can comedy cartoons can still be good, cartoons, and this applies for all the other cartoons I'm about to talk about on this list. These cartoons show that cartoons in the modern era can not only be good but are actually even better than they are in the previous eras. When it comes to developing comedy adventure based cartoons, there is more time dedicated to the animation, story and everything else than there was in the previous decades, where in the previous decades they would just write just about anything and put it on, and if it was good, put it on television. That's how it was back in the day. No, there is more respect when it comes to developing cartoons. Only problem I have with cartoons of today is that there isn't much variety. Every cartoon is kind of the same. Even the action adventure block, which I'm gonna get to later in this list, which, like I said in the webcam portion of this video, is my favorite genre. Even that's more comedic based now than it was back in the previous decades. But let's continue. Let's continue. So those four shows, um, right there, these four shows which saved Cartoon Network don't even get much airtime anymore. So yeah, that was Uncle Grandpa, Steven Universe, Loud House, and Adventure Time. Once again, this is also a short overview and long list of all the cartoons I'm going to be reviewing and talking about. A few of these and some of these cartoons I've already talked about on my YouTube channels. Going to be talking about them more in depthly, which I've been actually trying to do for like three to 4 years now. Let's continue. Now it's time to go to Nickelodeon. For Nickelodeon, number 5, we got Loud House. Loud House. And then number 6 is Alvin and the Chipmunks. Let me tell you something about these two shows. Let's start off with Loud House. Loud House, once again, this show this show along with Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers, pretty much, once again, it has preserved Nickelodeon's credibility. And Nickelodeon, thanks to Loud House, is sort of getting back to what they used to be. They're better, especially in comparison to what they were about 6 to 5 years ago, when iCarly and Victorious were on the channel. They're starting to tone down the live action just a bit and go more in an animation direction, which is working for them. They're really trying to get their old fans back, and it's slowly working, because Loud House is one of the best shows, and it's one of the best shows of all time, and it's the best thing to ever happen to Nickelodeon. And one of the only Loud House, one of the reasons I tune into Nickelodeon. The second reason I tune into Nickelodeon is Alvin and the Chipmunks, the 2015 television series. It's about damn time the Alvin and the Chipmunks return to television. And I mean return to television as a TV series, as a cartoon series, not those crappy live action movies. I mean as a television series. And this series is just like the original, except this series tackles modern issues and features cell phones and technology of today. And of course the Chipmunks look more human, but Yeah, and this show along with Loud House is one of the best shows on Nickelodeon, and one of the main reasons I tune in to Nickelodeon these days. Number five is number five number five is Bunnicula. This show is basically a um horror, dark comedy, supernatural adventure based show, much in the vein of Scooby Doo. Scooby Doo is what this show is. It's supposedly based on a book. I've watched a couple of episodes of this, and already I like this show. It's pretty much this era's, not only this era's Scooby Doo, but Courage the Cowardly Dog. Number six is Wacky Races. Didn't ask for a Wacky Races reboot, but this right here is a great reboot, and is actually slightly better than the original, because this one focuses more on storytelling and focuses on the personal lives of the races and of the various racers race car drivers. So yeah, Wacky Races, awesome reboot. Number seven is one of Cartoon Network's newest shows, Craig of the Creek, which is pretty much the recess of this generation. Number eight is We Bare Bears, another great cartoon. Number nine is another recent cartoon that actually just premiered in June of this year, and that's Summer Camp Island, which is about an elephant named Oscar and a hedgehog named Hedgehog attending a very supernatural camp with all sorts of supernatural adventures. Number 10 is Tom and Jerry Tales and the 2014 series. Never been a huge fan of the original old school 1940s Tom and Jerry cartoons, even though I enjoy several of their cartoons. Never been a huge fan of Tom and Jerry, but I love their modern work, starting with Tom and Jerry Kids from the 90s. From the 90s, the cartoons of today's sport, better animation, funnier gags and jokes, and yeah, and way better storytelling than in the previous decades. Number 11 is the new Looney Tunes and the show Wabbit and the show Wabbit, just like with Tom and Jerry. Never been that much of a huge Looney Tune fans, even though I'm a huge fan of the Looney Tunes characters and several of their shorts and their very famous animators who gave life to these animators and voice actors and actresses who gave life to these Looney Tune characters. But it was just like with Tom and Jerry. I've always enjoyed their newer stuff, such as Space Jam, Tiny Toons, Animaniacs, and um, um, the Tasmanian Devil Show, and pretty much all the modern shows they have. There was the Looney Tunes show, which was a sitcom, and Wabbit, which was a series of shorts, series of slapstick heavy shorts that go back to the style of the original Looney Tunes cartoons. Number 12 is Peanuts, Charlie Brown. Not much to say about this. Huge fan of Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown stands out from most of the other shows on this list just because basic and it was basic, generic, and relatable, and that made it stand out from every other show on this list. And happy to see them back. Happy to see Charlie Brown back. Whenever it's Halloween, Christmas, or any holiday, I'm always happy to see Charlie Brown on television, man. So yeah. 13 is 13 is Scooby Doo. Oh yeah, 13 is the Scooby Doo cartoons. Scooby Doo Mysteries Inc. was just recently ended, and Be Cool Scooby Doo was just recently ended. Never really get sick of Scooby Doo, unlike everyone else who hates all the spin-offs, who hates that Scooby Doo to this day since 1969 has had cartoon after cartoon, and they're about to bring out a new one. As long as they're good, I don't care. I'm a huge fan
of Scooby Doo. I like all of them, even the terrible ones with Scrappy Doo. Yeah, Scooby Doo Mysteries Inc. Which this show is unique. So this show was a supernatural comedy action adventure based comedy action adventure based show that featured cameos in the finale, which was awesome. Featured cameos from other classic Hanna Barbera characters like Funky Phantom and Speed Buggy, then and Fang Face. Um, then of course you got Be Cool Scooby Doo, which was a slapstick heavy situation comedy, a pup named Scooby Doo style, Ricky Morty style comedic, overly comedic Scooby Doo that goes back to the art style and format of the original 1969 Scooby Doo. It has the 90s and 2000s based Scooby Doo humor, which made for a hilarious show. Which did both of these shows have most recently ended, and they're talking about bringing out a new Scooby Doo, which I'll watch if it's good. But yeah, well that's it for now for the comedy portion of my favorite cartoons, the 2010s comedy portion. Now for the 2010s action adventure based cartoons. First the first cartoon on this list is Okay, Let's Be Heroes. Let's be Heroes. This is a Japanese anime inspired cartoon. First heard about it in 2016. Didn't care much for it because of the art style and the way the show looked, but finally was forced to watch it earlier this year because my internet connection was out. My internet connection was bad, so I had no choice but to watch this cartoon. And from the first episode in to the theme song, which the theme song of the show is better than the show itself and really gets you hyped for the show, I was hooked on the show. One of the best cartoons of all time, and can't wait to see more. This is one of Cartoon Network's newest shows, and once again, doesn't get that much airtime despite how popular it is. Um, Number two is Mighty Magosaurus. Been a huge fan of this show since 2015, where there were 2 to 3 minute cartoon clips on Cartoon Network's video website. Those clips were so damn good, they were greenlighted for a full-length 30-minute television series in 2016. It's one of the best shows on Cartoon Network, and once again, doesn't receive that much airtime. And the cartoon gives us more of what these clips gave. And for those who don't know, as you can see by the title, and picture here, this is another anime inspired cartoon. It's vastly similar to the 1960s, 80s, and 90s based animes such as Astro Boy and Slayers. Um, Number three is Sonic Boom, which I am angered to hear this cartoon has recently been canceled, even though they promised a season three. But according to Wikipedia, the show finished in November of 2017, and there's no word. There is nothing about another season. So I take it that this show is canceled. But Sonic Boom, one of the best cartoons Cartoon Network had, because this cartoon was vastly different from all of the other cartoons on Cartoon Network, and that this was a comedy driven based action adventure based cartoon, um giving us some variety. So yeah, Sonic Boom, and was so happy to see back Sonic back on television again, because Sonic, just like Batman, Spider-Man, Sonic is Mr. Television. He has about 5 cartoons now. Number four is not only one of the best cartoons of today, but the best, my opinion, the best Ninja Turtles cartoon of all time. That is TMNT 2012. This cartoon recently ended earlier this year and has now been replaced by a new Ninja Turtles cartoon called Rise of the TMNT, which I've seen bits and pieces of that, and that show is okay. but it's nowhere near as good as this or the previous entries in the Turtle franchise. And this Turtles show right here is the best Turtles show. It's the best Teenage Mutant Turtles show around. It took what made the 2003 and 80s cartoon good in aspects from all forms of the Turtles franchise, and made, in my opinion, one of the best cartoons around. Not only one of the best cartoons around, but the best Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles based cartoon. Number 5 is the Marvel Action Block, Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, Avengers Assemble, the sequel follow up, Ultimate Spider-Man, and the newest one, Spider-Man 2017, which 2017 is okay, but I hear they're gonna cross over with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and I'm pretty sure they'll be better in the following seasons. Guardians of the Galaxy, I've said the same thing. Awesome cartoon. The only thing I don't like about that, and actually this is a problem I have with the entire Marvel Action Block, is the voice work in comparison to the MCU and previous Marvel-based cartoons is absolutely terrible. It makes these shows unwatchable, but awesome shows. And the best shows on Disney Channel, the Marvel Action Block, Star Wars are the saviors of modern Disney Channel. Um, 7 is Justice League Action, which is another comedy-driven action adventure based cartoon featuring the Justice League. That this cartoon, while not being as good as, in my opinion, the previous DC cartoons, it takes aspects from all eras of Justice Leagues, the Super Friends, the DC Animated Universe, and the DC cartoons of the 2000s, and made a fun superhero action adventure based show. Um, um, then of course you have DC Nation with Young Justice, Green Lantern, the animated series, Beware the Batman. Nothing much to say about these shows other than how awesome they were, and the cancellation of all of these shows turned me off the Cartoon Network for about a year. Steven Universe and Uncle Grandpa bought me back, man. Bought me brought me back. And Beware the Batman, I actually missed. I saw Beware the Batman shortly after, towards the end of its run, because I was so mad at them for canceling Green Lantern and Young Justice. But yeah. Um, number number 11 is the 2008 Star Wars: The Clone Wars series and its sequel spin-off, Star Wars Rebels. Star Wars: The Clone Wars was one of the underrated gems on Cartoon Network. Vastly superior, vastly went places where the movies didn't go. And then you have Rebels, which Rebels I hadn't seen that much of, but just like Marvel, was an improvement for Disney Channel. That's all I gotta say about that. And then next is and number 12 is Transformers. Transformers Prime, and its sequel, Transformers Robots in Disguise. Nothing much to say about these shows other than how awesome they are. Yeah. Now we go to the comedy retro, one of my favorite parts of the list. All the cartoons I just talked about, those were the modern based. Those were the modern 2010s based cartoons. Now it's time for the comedy adventure retro based cartoons. Then we go to my favorite of the list, the action adventure. Number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Number 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the Smurfs, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Fantastic Max, the Snorks, and number 5 is the Hair Bear Bunch. These are pretty much my top 5 cartoons. When I think cartoons, these are the 5 cartoons that come to mind. And they're still as entertaining as they were when I was a child. So Yeah, number 6 is the 90s and 2000s Nicktoons. Doug, Rugrats, Hey Arnold, Ah, Real Monsters, Chalk Zone, My Dad's a Rock Star, My Life as a Teenage, My Life as a Teenage robot, robot. And number 7 is the cult classic Two Stupid Dogs. Number 8 is Scooby Doo. Scooby Doo, the original series in 1969, the sequel with Scrappy Doo, the Scooby Doo show, the Scooby Doo movies, the Scooby Doo movies with various guest stars like Batman and Robin, and real life celebrities like Sonny and Cher, Sandy Duncan, and what's that guy's name? Oh yeah, the late Don Knotts. Pup named Scooby Doo, a wacky reboot of the series, a wacky childlike version of the series, and of course, the 2000s What's New Scooby Doo. Scooby Doo. I also enjoy the others like the Scooby and Scrappy Doo, and of course the 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo, which were the black sheeps of the franchise. Never seen Get a Clue Scooby Doo. Number 9 is Garfield. That's the 1985 and the 2009 reboot, with the 1985 version being better, but the 2009 version had a better animation and production, but the 1985 version was much more entertaining. Number 10 is Casper, the original, and of course the reboot, which I thought the reboot was way better. I also like the original shorts from the 50s that featured Casper. Never knew Casper was that old. No, number 11 is Beetlejuice. Is Beetlejuice 1990 is the Beetlejuice cartoon. Number 12 is the Addams Family cartoon. Great campy horror, supernatural horror based cartoons. 13 is the various Hanna-Barbera cartoons, which I mentioned a couple of them. I started the list off with 5 of them, but some of the others were Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, Snagglepuss, Quick Draw McGraw, Doggy and Augie, the Flintstones, the Jetsons, the Josie and the Pussycats, Speed Buggy, the Chan Clan, Hong Kong Phooey, and many more, many more cartoons from the comedy adventure. 14, 14 Toon Disney, Goof Troop, the New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, House of Mouse, Fillmore, Timo Supremo, the Rescue Rangers, Recess, Lloyd in Space, The Weekenders, Gravity Falls, Phineas and Ferb, and of course the Canadian cartoon Braceface. Cartoons. Next is Cartoons. That's Dexter's Laboratory, Johnny Bravo, Cow and Chicken, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Ed and Eddie, Codename Kids Next Door, Billy and Mandy. 18, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, one of the best cartoons Cartoon Network has ever had. Hi Puffy Yummy Yumi, one of the more underrated cartoons Cartoon Network's ever had. 20 is Class of 3000, another underrated cartoon that was canceled way too soon. 21, 21, the Filmation comedy-based cartoons. That's the Archie show, the original Scooby-Doo, which that was the Archie show was the original Scooby-Doo, and of course Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids. Uh, so yeah, that's it right now. And before, then of course, the Space Coast cartoons. That's Space Coast 1994, and Space Coast to Coast from 1994, and its spin-off in 1996 for children, Cartoon Planet. That's it for the retro comedy adventure based cartoons. Now it's time for my favorite part of this list, the action adventure based cartoons, the retro action adventure based cartoons. And we're starting the list off with the sword and sorcery based cartoons. Number one is the He-Man cartoons. That's the He-Man, the most popular one and most notable one. He-Man, the 1983 Filmation series. Its sequel, follow-up, She-Ra. She-Ra, the 1990s New Adventures of He-Man. My opinion, the best He-Man of all time, and the second best He-Man of all time, and widely considered to be the best He-Man of all time. And that's He-Man, the Masters of the Universe, the 2002 series, an underrated classic that was canceled way too soon. Number two is the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, anime based cartoon loosely based on the board game. Number three is the Thundercats, both the 1985 and the 2011 reboot. 2011 reboot, from a production wise, was way better than the 80s version, but the 80s version, in my opinion, had a way more interesting and more entertaining plot. Um, Four is a show I just recently started watching, but I've been wanting to watch since about 2006, and that's Highlander, the animated series, another underrated classic. Number five is another childhood favorite of mine, Thundar the Barbarian. Number six is another show I just recently started watching, but it's been around for a long time, and that's Goltar and the Golden Lance. Another He-Man clone. This was Hanna-Barbera's answer to He-Man. Number seven, and now we get to the video game based cartoons. Number seven is Street Fighter, the animated series. Number eight, Mortal Kombat, Defenders of the Realm. Number nine is the Double Dragon based cartoon. Number 10, the Sonic cartoons. That's the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic AM, Sonic Underground, X, and I already mentioned Boom, with Sonic X, Boom, and Underground being the best Sonic cartoons of all time. Then you have one of the worst video game based cartoons of all the time, but it was always one of my favorite shows, and that's Super Mario Brothers, the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, which also aired back to back, which also included episodes of the Zelda character, Legend of Zelda, featuring the Link character from the Zelda games. Both those cartoons were equally bad, but they were childhood favorites of mine. That's why they made this list, even though I said no terrible cartoons on this list. Number 12 is the Darkstalkers cartoon, a horror-based fighting game loosely based on the 1940s Universal horror monsters, the Wolfman and Frankenstein. Widely considered one of the worst video game based cartoons of all time, but I've seen several episodes of it, and it's already one of my favorite animated series. Didn't even know this was adapted for television, and now comic books, which are even better. So yeah. Number 13 is the 90s, 80s, 60s, 90s, 80s, 70s, and 2000s, and this is the 90s, 80s, 2000s, 70s, and 60s Marvel Animated Universe cartoons. Let's start off with the 90s. The 90s, you got X-Men, the animated series, Spider-Man, the animated series, Iron Man, the animated series, one of the best. The Avengers United They Stand, widely considered the worst, but I consider one of the best. The Silver Surfer, the animated series, the weakest of the group, the Incredible Hulk, the second weakest of the group. Fantastic Four, in my opinion, one of the best. And of course, Fantastic Four 1994 series, and the criminally underrated Spider-Man Unlimited series, which was even better than the Revolutionary Spider-Man, the animated series, and another cartoon that was canceled way too soon. So yeah, that was the 90s animated series, which I consider some of the best and finest work of Marvel. Then you had the 80s, which was good too, with Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, one of the best cartoons around. The spin which features then the spin-off cartoon, which features Spider-Man without Iceman and Firestar, his amazing friends, but set in the same universe. Then um, you had RoboCop, who RoboCop is not a Marvel character, but he aired on this block. Then of course you had the Pride of X-Men pilot, the one episode animated series featuring the 1980s, 1980s X-Men, 80s X-Men. Then of course from the 1970s you had the 1970 you had the no, before we get oh yeah before we get let's talk about the 2000s. Then the 2000s you had X-Men Evolution, which I thought production wise and animation wise was vastly similar to the 90s X-Men animated series. Then of course you had Wolverine and the X-Men, a pretty good reboot. Would have been better if this show had been on Cartoon Network instead of Nicktoons Network. Then of course you had Fantastic Four, World's Greatest Heroes, production wise the best Fantastic Four cartoon, production wise, not story wise. Story wise, the other three I'm about to talk about were 1,000 times better. Um, um, yeah, I already talked about the 2010, so let's go back to the 60s and 70s. For the 60s, you had, in my opinion, the 1967 Hanna-Barbera Fantastic Four cartoon, the only non-Marvel the only Marvel property not owned by Disney, because this was produced by Hanna-Barbera. But this right here was one of the greatest cartoons of all time, and it was canceled because of violence. Then you had the 1960s Spider-Man cartoon, which is not the best Spider-Man cartoon, but this cartoon started it all for Spider-Man being adapted for television, and is unintentionally one of the most hilariously action-packed cartoons I've ever seen. That's why I made this list. And of course, yeah, that's it for the Marvel animated. That's it for the Marvel animated shows. Now for the DC based cartoons, the DC cartoons of the 90s, 2000s, the 2000s, 70s, and 80s. Let's start off with the 2090s. You have the Justice League cartoons, Justice League, which was okay, and Justice League Unlimited, which was even better. These are some of the best of the DC animated universe. Then you started it off with Batman, the animated series, which was revolutionary back in the day, and still okay. Now you have the sequel, The New Adventures of Batman, which was even better, which in my opinion was even better. Then you had Superman, the animated series, which was slightly better than Batman the animated series, which was much better than Batman the animated series in my opinion, but not as good as the Justice League and cartoons of the day, but a great prequel to show you how these DC characters came to be. And I like how these cartoons were all in a shared universe with the Justice League cartoon. Then you had the sequel, Batman Beyond, one of the best adaptations of Batman now, even better now than it was when I was a child. Um, yeah, then you had Static Shock, the worst of the DC um, animated universe. Then you had Teen. Then let's go to the 2000, back to the 2000s. You had Teen Titans, which was even, in my opinion, better than the DC animated universe. Then you had an underrated gem in Legion of superheroes, which was canceled way too soon. Then you had the Batman, which I thought was vastly superior to the original Batman the animated series. Then last but not least, you had on Cartoon Network another underrated gem, in my opinion, the best adaptation of Batman, Batman Brave and the Bold, because this cartoon while mostly being based on the story, the Batman from the 50s and 60s, this Batman encompassed all eras of Batman. So so yeah, and so yeah, those were the DC cartoons. Oh yes, from the 70s, the Super Friends cartoons with the superhero Galactic Guardians, legendary superpowers, and Challenge of the Super Friends and World's Greatest Super Friends cartoons being the best. But I like all the Super Friends cartoons, even the campy 1970s Scooby-Doo based Super Friends cartoon. Um, 15 is uh, 15 is another superhero-based cartoon called Wildcats. 16 Ultra Force, another superhero cartoon based on the now defunct Malibu Comics Company. Wing Commander, another video game based cartoon. Sky Surfer Strike Force, a sci-fi G.I. Joe Mega Man inspired cartoon. The G.I. Joe cartoons, the G.I. Joe Resolute, the G.I. Joe Renegades cartoon, the Real American Hero, G.I. Joe Extreme, and of course the best of all time, G.I. Joe, the 2006 G.I. Joe cartoon 20, Exo Squad 21, Bionic 6, 22, the Transformers cartoons, the 1984 series Unicron trilogy, Beast Wars, and of course, Transformers animated. 23, Stargate Infinity. 24, Centurions. 25, the Ben 10, the entire Ben 10 franchise. That's the original Ben 10, Ben 10 Alien Force, and Ultimate Alien, the best of the Ben 10 franchise. And of course, last but not least, Ben 10 Omniverse, with the reboot, I didn't even include in this list, being the worst Ben 10 cartoon of all time. That's it for the superhero sci-fi superhero sci-fi based shows. Now it's time for other now it's time for other cartoon now it's time for the mutant anthropomorphic animal or human based cartoons. 25 is a new cartoon I just started watching from 1996 called Stone Protectors, which is a cross between the Ninja Turtles and the Trolls franchise, Street Sharks, SWAT Cats, Biker Mice from Mars, the Toxic Crusaders, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 1987 series, the live action Next Mutation series, and of course the 2003 series, with, in my opinion, the 80s and the live action version being the best on this list. But the best of all time is the 2012. 32, Gargoyles. 33, Mummies Alive. 34, a new cartoon I just recently started watching, or what little of it I could, Creepy Crawlies. 35, the Ghostbusters. The 2035, the Ghostbusters cartoons. That's the hugely popular Real Ghostbusters and Extreme Ghostbusters, and of course, yeah, and its sequel, um, Extreme Ghostbusters. 36. 36 is The Mummy. 37 is Star Wars, the 2003 Clone Wars. 38 is the Adventures, the Adventures of the Adventures of the Galaxy Rangers. 38 is Jason the Wielded Warriors. 39 is the Filmation based cartoons, Flash, the Adventures of Flash Gordon, Brave Star, and their version of the Ghostbusters cartoon, which was loosely based on a live action series. And 38 is the Hanna-Barbera based cartoons. That's Space Stars, which features Space Coast Coast to Coast, the Herculoids, Space Coast Coast to Coast, the Herculoids, and Team Force, Birdman and the Galaxy Trio, Shazam, Blue Falcon and Dynamite, Godzilla, and of course, Plastic Man, and Mighty Man, and Yuck. So yeah, those are all my favorite retro action adventure based cartoons. And these are cartoons I'm going to be reviewing and talking about on my brand new Douglas Blair Roberts fan page, and my brand new Super Vader, and of course, and on my Super Vader 400 fan page. Alright, well, I'm done for now. Now it's time to hit my music. Alright, hold on for a moment.
Hey, so you need a website. Let me show you how I made mine with Wix. First, I went to Wix.com. Here you can start.
Sorry about that.